I enjoy coming to work every day knowing that clients are depending on me to guide them through whatever financial needs they have.
Every client we have is different. And so it's really about finding out what's really the most important thing per client.
With financial planning, everything is interconnected. So a comprehensive plan means that you're taking care of income needs now, income needs in the intermediate term, and income needs long term. We'll do an asset cycle portfolio. We'll do a riskalyze test. We'll do a life insurance audit or a life insurance review.
And so when we build a deep relationship with our clients, then we can take a step back and then we can look at different options to help them specifically get to their goals. One of the things I feel our job is as advisors is to introduce strategies to clients that maybe they did not know that they were out there. But it's our our job to come out and say, have you ever thought about this?
And the planning it's not always about income, but a lot of it is also about the legacy. So the element of family is very important to us, and it's important to our clients.
Hello, my name is Steve Jablonski, and I'm the host of Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush. Today we have an exciting topic which most people will face this decision at least once in their lifetime. Many will face it several times, and that is, what do you do with your retirement plan when you leave your employer? It's been said today that on average, employees change jobs every 3 to 5 years. So some of you will be facing this many more times than just once. So with that said, Jeff?
Well, hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. Happy New Year. It's great to be here. 2020, wow, it's really hard to believe that a new decade is upon us. And of course, it's here at Informed Family, we're very excited about the decade to come. And of course, later in the show today, we're going to talk about some legislation that is just passed the books down there in Washington. They're calling it the Secure Act. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about the 9 401k mistakes to avoid. And as you said, people are changing jobs more frequently today in today's job market. It's not like it used to be where you got a job and you stayed there for a long time, 20 years, 30 years. Heck, the first job I had, there was guys walking around that had been there for like 40 years. So, literally starting like right out of high school kind of thing. But anyway, that's not the way it is today. And you have to be careful because every time you change jobs, that means that you change retirement accounts. So you're right on spot there, Steve, today with this topic.
Yeah, and before we get into that, we have some exciting things going on and how we like to educate people in the news.
Yeah, so, we've really been, in the news quite a bit lately. And just to sort of review some of the things that we've done, I wrote an article for the Reading Eagle. I also I wrote a couple articles in the Kiplinger newsletter. So we've gotten some good exposure there, and we're putting out really a lot of good information, pertinent information, primarily how it relates to retirement. Steve, you of course were featured in the Norristown Patch, and our colleague Barry was featured in both Yahoo News and Investopedia. So, we've been fortunate enough to get our name out there a little bit, and of course the show here on PCTV is good, because not only is our show seen, on the local cable, if you will, now we've got streaming on the PCTV website, which is the PCTV Network.com, and of course on our website, which is informedfamily.com. So a lot of stuff going on, Steve.
And so, Jeff, when we get into the 9 mistakes to avoid, before we get into that, what's the environment look like now with pensions and 401ks versus 30, 40 years ago?
Well, I like to say this is not your father's retirement. People today are, by and large, faced with self-directed accounts, meaning that we don't have the pensions of yesterday, unless you're working in a public setting like education or a municipal setting where some of those folks are still fortunate enough to get pensions. But if you're in the private sector at all, most organizations, even large organizations, have either done away with their pensions completely or grandfathered the plans, and new people in are not able to take advantage of pensions. So now it's it's the IRA and the 401k that are really the mainstays of the retirement landscape.
And so, starting off, let's start off with mistake number 1, and that's the temptation, or people take the money and run when they retire. And what penalties could there possibly be, and what does that do for long-term planning?
Yeah, was that a song by Steve Miller? Take the money and run. I think it was.
It was.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, take the money and run. That's really not a good strategy. And it's tempting, because a lot of times when you're in transition from job to job, you may be without your job for a while. You may be moving. There's a lot of things that happen in the course of life, and it's very tempting to just cash out your plan with your existing employer. And that's a bad strategy for a couple of reasons. First being that if you're under the age of 59 and a half, you're not only going to pay tax on that money, but you're also going to be paying a penalty. And not only that, Steve, that money is really designated for retirement. So now you're saying, well, we're not going to use it for retirement. We're going to use it to pay off debt. We're going to use it to put a new roof on the house. We're going to use it to take a dream vacation. We're going to use it for other things other than retirement. And I'll tell you, retirement can sneak up on you in a hurry. And if you do that a couple of times, that can really set you back. So generally not a good idea. I also want to say, Steve, before I hand this back over to you, what we're talking about here today, these mistakes, with your 401k. This is we actually did a white paper on this, and we're offering. We want to offer free today to those people viewing our show, that they can get a free copy of our white paper. So we'll put some information up on a screen on how to do that. You can either call our office or send us an email, and we'll be happy to get that white paper out to you free of charge.
Okay, good. And so let's say the people overcome the temptation to take the money and run. And we see a lot of times we sit down with somebody and they have 3, 4 old 401ks left at their old employers. And are there any pluses to this? And I know there's minuses, so let's talk about that.
Well, I think the main thing is that when you leave your employer and you have a 401k there, you have some good options. The best option is to roll that money over into an IRA, okay, which you can do without a penalty. And I know we'll talk a little bit about the mechanics of that in another mistake, if you will. But keeping it with your old employer just generally is not a good idea, especially, like as you said, people are leaving jobs every 3 to 5 years. Well, we've talked to people that have, they've got like 3 they've got 3 to 5 old 401ks. So it's just hard to keep track of. There's different investment options that you don't know about. You may not be in synchronization with your risk. If something happens to you, you die. Your beneficiaries might have trouble tracking this stuff down. So it's generally, we advocate when you leave your employer, you just roll that money over to an IRA, which for a multitude of reasons just gives you, better control and better planning.
And in some cases too, the plan documents restrict the ability to stretch it out.
Well, if the plan documents restrict your ability to stretch it out, then you definitely want to get your money out of there, because stretching the IRA, or stretching the 401k rather, into stretch, and I guess we should define what stretching means, and it's not what you do before you start exercising. Especially as you get older, the hamstrings start to tighten up, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when you inherit a retirement account and you're younger, you get to stretch those payments out over the course of your lifetime. And of course, there's some, when we get into this Secure Act a little bit later in the show today, we'll talk about some of the changes in there. But if you can't stretch, you got to move that money into an IRA where you can.
Yep. And so if we get to mistake number 3, is how do you actually take the money out? And let's say you decided that you don't want to spend it, but you want the company to write you a check to put it into an IRA. How does that work?
Well, this is a simple one, and one that's often overlooked. And there's just in a way of mechanics, and it's surprising how some institutions just miss this. When you leave an employer, or you just want to roll over an IRA, it's a good idea to have the check made out to the new custodian. And then when you do that, that's treated as a direct transfer.
Okay.
If you have the check made out to the person, so let's say, Steve, this is you, and you want to roll the money over to another account. If they make the check out to you, to Steve Jablonski, that creates really 2 problems. The first of which is that they're required by law to withhold 20% withholding. So let's say it's a $100,000 account that you want to roll over. Well, right away, they're going to withhold $20,000 because they don't know what you're going to do with the money. Okay? Now, the other problem is that when they write you that check, the clock starts ticking.
Okay.
And you have 60 days to move that into another account. But you have to put the entire $100,000 in, right?
Yep.
If you just put $80,000 in, then the $20,000 becomes taxable. So you got to make up the $20,000 with your own money. So it's a crazy situation. So why not just make the money, the check payable to the new custodian? So let's say you want to open a brokerage account with XYZ company. Just tell them to make the check payable to XYZ company for the benefit of Steve Jablonski, and then you're good to go. Okay, yeah, so that's a problem. Now the other thing, Steve, is that you can only do these rollovers. You can only do 1 per year, right? So if they're making a check out to you, you can only do that 1 time per year. Direct transfers, you can do as many of them as you want.
Okay, well, good. That's important to know. So let's go on to number 4. And a lot of larger companies will pay and have their own stock choice in a 401k. So what are some of the concerns here? What are some of the things to look out for?
Well, not only are they, they're offering the company stock as a choice, but sometimes the matching part of it is also in company stock. So let's say, for example, that you're putting 6% of your pay into your 401k, and then the company, let's say the company matches 50%, so they're putting another 3% in, but their match may be in company stock. So you don't have any control over that. They're going to give you stock, so you may be sitting on a bunch of stock, and we've seen this in with a lot of big employers. And if that company is in trouble, and of course the example that we can point to is Enron, many years ago now, back in I guess the early 2000s, when we had we had a little bit of an oil crisis, or an energy crisis, if you will. Those employees of those plants, they lost all their money.
Yep.
Right? So we call that overweighting, and that's certainly not a good idea. But the other one is really the area where you're an expert, and that is NUA. And NUA stands for Net Unrealized Appreciation. So, and it's probably a little more technical than what we want to go over today with the scope of our program. But maybe you could touch on NUA just a little bit.
Yeah. So what we see in a lot of cases is that individuals be working for a company for 20, 30, 40 years, and they were purchasing stock over that time period. And so what they paid for it is called the cost basis, and that can be very low, and it's very highly appreciated. And there's a way to take the whole 401k out, separate the stock from the IRA, and it's treated differently for taxation. And so we look at this, and it can be a huge advantage to some people to actually take advantage of NUA. But that's definitely by a case-by-case basis as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think the important thing to do here is, if you have NUA, if you have stock in your 401k plan, give us a call. We can take a look at that. We can give you an opinion or a second opinion on what you can do with the NUA, because it can get a little tricky, it can get a little complicated, but at the same time, you can save a lot of money in taxes. With the NUA, especially if you have stock that is highly appreciated. That's really where the NUA comes in.
Yep. Good. So let's go on to 5. And this is something that I've seen in my 25 years, is you'll sit down with somebody, you'll look at their 401k statement, and there's no beneficiary.
Yeah, either that or it's the wrong beneficiary. So that's a problem. So in our practice, we review beneficiaries constantly because it's important. If you have a retirement account and you don't have you have no one as a named beneficiary, when you die, your estate is the beneficiary by default.
Yep.
And when that happens, then all that money becomes taxable and due immediately. So you want to make sure that you have living, breathing people as named beneficiaries. So that's one problem. The other problem that we see is outdated people. Like people that are already deceased. Right, so that if the person's deceased, then the same thing happens. It just defaults to your estate. Ex-spouses, I've seen that more times than I really care to remember, because that really causes a problem too. Because the spouse may be long gone. The divorce could have happened 20 years ago, but if they're still named on this document, then they have a legal claim to that money. So that's not a good idea. We are big advocates of listing not only primary beneficiaries, Steve, but also contingent beneficiaries, and so that protects the money inside the family down to the next generation. So let's say, I'll use you as an example again here this morning. So you have an IRA. So what you do on your IRA is you want to name your wife as the primary beneficiary.
Yep.
That's pretty simple. But what happens, God forbid, what happens if the two of you die in a common disaster and she's not there to claim your IRA account? What you will do is you'll name your 3 children as contingent beneficiaries. So what that means is the contingent beneficiaries stand in line if the primary beneficiary is unable to make the claim. I mean, that sounds like really, really simple, and it is, but surprisingly, a lot of people miss that. So it's important to keep your beneficiaries up to date.
Yep. So we move on to number 6, and that's really trying to recoup losses or chase the market. And I guess we want to try to keep investors' decisions from becoming emotional. So how do we help people there?
Well, trying to recoup losses, you really can't. It's just hard to do. And people, it's like, I guess it's human nature to want what you can't have, right? So, you always think, well, geez, only if I would have done this, I could have gotten that. And, it's really hard to predict and time the market. So you want to have a good strategy and you want to stick with it. And along with that is, risk. So you want to have your investments consistent with where what your risk tolerance is. And of course, we, in our firm, we use Riskalyze to do that, and that really helps to quantify everyone's risk and helps, get these investments in the proper place. And I don't know if you want to expand on that, Steve, because Riskalyze is really your baby. And we've been able to use that as a tool to really help our clients, quantify their risk and get their investments in a proper place.
Yeah, and something for Riskalyze, and that could be a whole show on its own, where that we really want to look at how comfortable they are with downturns in their investments. So let's go on to 7, and this is really, when we get closer to retirement, what steps should people take when they get close to retirement?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I just want to again reiterate that we're going through mistakes people make with their 401k plan. This is a white paper that we did, and we want to offer that free to our viewers today. So if you're interested in that, give me a call or send us an email and we'll get that report out to you, because this is really important. And maybe you want to start the year off right, the decade off right, and you want to make good financial decisions. But burying your head in the sand about your retirement is you're basically in denial. We see a lot of people in their 50s, even silly as it sounds, even in their 60s, that just haven't really done anything to save money for retirement. And the answers we get are somewhat astounding. People think, oh well, I'm just going to keep working forever, and I'm going to shoot myself. It's crazy, but it's something that you really have to start planning. The earlier the better. I mean, we just can't emphasize that enough. If you are within 10 years of retirement, it is absolutely critical that you start the planning process.
And so we did say today we'd get into the new Secure Act. So as Jeff said, you can contact our company, and we're going to go over 8 and 9. We can go over that if you contact our company, which is forgetting about a loan and doing it alone. But Jeff, I'll swing it over to you. December of last year, this was passed, the Secure Act. There's a couple things. One is required minimum distributions, and the other is the stretch. So if we can maybe summarize those for people, because those are things that will affect people today.
Yeah, I mean, this is hot off the press. The Secure Act was signed into law on December the 20th of 2019. So, a lot of people were already on their holiday break when they decided to do this. And of course, they've been talking about this for a while. It was at least a year,
Yep.
maybe 2 years. They've been talking about this. And the main thing, and drum roll please, but it's changing the RMD to age 72. So it used to be, up until December 31st of 2019, it was 70 and a half. So now, none of this half stuff. It's like 72. So that's big.
Yeah.
That's really, really big when you think about it. It allows people to defer that, maybe up to 2 years. So that's a significant change in the law, and that's effective in 2020. So call our office if you need clarification on that. Or I guess we should even talk about what does secure mean? The Secure Retirement Act, setting every community up for retirement enhancement.
Yep.
How about that? Secure. Yep. Setting every community up for retirement enhancement. Okay, the other important item with the Secure Act is these stretch provisions that we alluded to earlier. And if it's still a spouse, no problem. You can still take an IRA from a spouse and you can stretch those payments out over your lifetime. But if it's a non-spouse, and there are some exceptions to this, but generally speaking, if a non-spouse is inheriting an IRA, like your children, let's use your kids as an example again. It used to be they could stretch it out over their lifetime using a table. No more. They have 10 years now to take out the money. So those are some of the highlights from the Secure Act, and we're getting to the end of the show here today. So again, if you want more information on the Secure Act, or if you want more information on our white paper on mistakes you can make with a 401k, please call our office or email our office, and we'll get more information out to you. And with all that being said, we're going to sign off here today, and you're watching Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush.